My view. Okay. So today's discussions are going to be just the stats on domestic violence, definitions and science of domestic violence, the role of transitional. So my role here is I'm the transitional housing supervisor. So I work directly with a lot of our clients that are in need of rental assistance. I work very closely with our shelter advocates here. Um, and then common services requested by our clients, creating a safe space for survivors. I know sometimes very difficult to speak to someone that's in crisis at the moment. So I'm hoping I could give you some tips on how to be able to speak better to the clients. Also safety planning, that's a big one that we do a lot here. Depending on the situation, we try to do safety plannings with our clients to be able to, maybe they're not ready to leave the relationship, but maybe they just need a safety plan in order to, when they're ready, how to leave safely without getting harmed. And then long-term support, and then Felipe will be helping us with the emergency transfer plan. So stats. So in California, 22% of unhoused individuals report experiencing domestic violence. In Ventura County is about 16.8. 1 in 100 adults report physical sexual harm from their intimate partner in California, and 75% of DV homicides happen when the survivor tries to leave their abuser. So a lot of the times we don't realize the danger they're in when they leave. We think it's like in the movies, they just leave and they live happily ever after. But when they leave, they're in the worst danger, because one of my clients said it better than I could ever say it. She said, when I'm there, I know when I'm gonna get hit. And now that I left, I don't know where the hit's gonna come from. Meaning it could be physical, it could be financial, it could be court papers. You don't know the level of danger that you put yourself into when you can't see the abuser. So, and more than 3 women are killed by their intimate partner every day in the United States. So for me, that's a very high number. Definition and red flags. So it depends on the law and the policies, but this involves a variety of violent behavior, short or long-term, visible or invisible impacts to the body and the mind. Usually you see a pattern with the partner and the power and control with them. When I started working for Coalition, I started working at the shelter. And I noticed a pattern with our clients. One of our clients was having a very difficult time sleeping through the night. And the reason was because her partner would put pieces of paper in the window because he thought she was flirting with the neighbor. So it was his way of knowing if she ever opened the window. When she came into the shelter, she would wake up and she would freak out because the papers were gone from the window. So one of the things, unfortunately, she had to do, even after leaving the shelter, was put pieces of paper in her window so she could wake up and have the peace of mind that the papers were still there and that he wasn't going to get mad that somebody opened the window. That's the impact that happens even after leaving the abusive relationship. It lingers on for years. it's not just it's over and a person could move on. It's the trauma that they still feel that they're there even when they're gone. Um, the power and control wheel, it explains basically everything in a nutshell, everything they have to go through: emotional abuse, isolation, blaming, using the kids. We hear that a lot. That, you know, they're my kids, I want to see them, or I'm gonna take them away if you leave. I'm the one that makes the money. Threats, intimidation. The thing is, I feel every time I show this to a client is they're saying they're going through all this or they went through all that at once. And it's a way of just, it's exhausting for our clients because they're trying to fight for their peace of mind. So they start choosing their battles. And sometimes that when they try to do that, the isolation gets worse or the threats get worse because they're trying to focus on something else that they're doing to them. So um, one of the biggest ones that we've seen is the financial abuse. A lot of our clients are told they're not allowed to work, but then they're being told that they should find a job. And once they start doing that, try and look for a job, then the responsibility of finding childcare is also up to them, and they have to cover childcare. Or they work and they have to give up their check. So my role for transitional is to be able to provide at least that, being able to cover that portion of um the stress that they're going through, which is the rent. If I could cover at least we could take care of your rent for a few months until you get on your feet, or if they need to find a new place to move, or their partner leaves and they're like, you know what, try to figure it out. I'm done. That's when they call us, and we try to accommodate by covering the rent, being able to help them in any way, shape that we can. We connect them to our therapist. We also offer support groups, parenting classes, whatever is it that they need to be able to move on and and continue with their kids or individually if they're by themselves. Common services that we get from clients that they need is restraining orders. Unfortunately, we lost our legal department, but we still offer restraining orders. We get referrals from the Family Justice Center and other agencies that they have a client that is need a restraining order. They refer them to me. So one of the good things, the reason that the Family Justice Center refers clients to me is because when they go to the Family Justice Center, it takes about 3 days off from work or childcare that they don't have to be able to get the restraining order, which is they have to go in for an intake. They need to go in to fill out the forms and they have to go to court. So that's 3 days. When they come to us, I do the intake on the phone. And I am very flexible with my time. If it has to be at 7 p.m. because that's the time that they put their kids down or whatever it is, it's like their quiet time, I'm willing to work with them on that. I do the intake with them and I do all the paperwork, and I try to have them pick up the paperwork and file the same day they go to court. So this way they don't miss 3 days of work, but they only miss one, especially when they don't have childcare. This way they only ask for 1 day for someone to watch their kids so they could go to court. Another one is immigration, especially with the changes that we're going through right now. I had mentioned this to Felipe earlier. We had one of our clients come in very scared with her kids, very young age, holding on to her because they had ICE walking around their neighborhood, and she was terrified. She came to pick up her check, her rent check, and then the property manager called us and said, "Hey, somebody dropped off a check with your agency's name on it. I don't know who it was." Apparently she just ran in and threw it on the desk and ran out. So we we're trying our hardest to be able to find more resources for immigration to give them a little bit of peace of mind, but unfortunately it's very difficult right now to do so. Resources for divorces, our biggest nonprofit we refer to is Ventura County Legal Aid. They also help with eviction notices. They're pretty good on that. So that's who we usually refer to if they have money to be able to cover an attorney. We do have a list of attorneys that are pretty familiar with domestic violence, and we connect them to them. Of course, we offer therapy and support groups. I provide parenting classes to my clients. And then other common needs, of course, housing, transportation's a big one, food and clothing, childcare, furniture, and utilities, covering utilities and budgeting. So everyone has different needs depending on their needs. If we don't offer them, I will find someone who does. Creating a safe space. So I think when I started working here, I think that was my biggest challenge, was speaking to a survivor, because there is when they're in that moment of trauma and they just need help, they're all over the place, and it ends up being very exhausting to try to keep up with them. So one of the things that helps me with this is I stopped doing my intakes behind my desk. I made a comfortable place next to my desk where there's a couch, there's a corner table. So I'm more present, closer to them than the barrier of a desk in between us. And I noticed they open up more that way than having furniture in between us. I know it's something small, but it has helped me a lot with being able to have that space, to that open space with the client. Another one is, I know it's difficult to start talking to a client and then it just becomes an hour or two conversation with them. I always suggest everyone try to limit it to 20 minutes. Within those 20 minutes, whatever trauma or whatever issue they're having, the emergency issue they're having, is going to address it within those 20 minutes. Anything past 20 minutes is going to be long-term trauma, and that's more for a therapist. That's when you go into like a therapy session, and we're not therapists. We're there to provide crisis intervention and be able to help them with whatever issue is happening at that moment. So I always check the time and make sure I stay within those 20 minutes. I also ask them if it's okay if I take notes while they're talking. And the notes are just so I could write down questions about what they're talking about so I could go back to them. I've never had a client say no, but it just helps me kind of stay connected and engage on what they're saying, so I don't interrupt within those 20 minutes. I just let them talk about what's going on, and then I could go back to those questions and clarify whatever I didn't understand. Because once you interrupt someone when they're talking, you throw them off and they're not gonna finish what they were trying to come across. So that's one of the things that I try to do. And then the way I close it is bringing back, okay, when the 20 minutes are done, I'm like, okay, let me go back very quickly. So what I understood was, and then I kind of go back to what they were saying. And then I ask questions, if I wrote questions down, if I need something clarified, because a lot of times they jump back and forth. And then, so I just make sure that I ask again, okay, so this is what I understood. Is this correct? Okay, let me refer you to different resources I have, or I just leave it open so they could always come back if they need more support in the future. But I do strongly recommend to try to keep it within 20 minutes. Anything past that is gonna get repetitive, or it's has nothing to do with what the need is at that moment. Safety planning. So one of the things that I do with a lot of our clients, especially when I used to work on the hotlines, is safety planning with clients. We have individuals that reach out to us, and sometimes they're not ready to leave. They just want to find more information so when they are ready. So, and one of the things I do ask them is, would they like to do a safety plan with me? Just so they feel safe while they're still there. And then, once they're ready, they could reach out to us. So, a way to stay safe in their home, I always tell them if they start arguing, not to stay in the bedroom, restroom, or in the kitchen. Try to move towards the living room. And the reason is because if they start fighting in the bedroom, we've had a client that got locked in her room about 3 to 4 days with her 2 sons with no food or water. So until the neighbors heard her screaming, and they called 911 and they were able to break down the door. So that's one. And also another one is the bed is a soft surface. If they get on top of them, it's going to be very difficult to get them off. The restroom, I always tell them, do not fight in the restroom, because most restrooms are small. And if you, quick push from the other person, you're going to hit sink, tub, and toilet, which is all hard surfaces. You pass out, they're going to call 911, say, I don't know, I heard a thump, and they were on the floor. So it's a very dangerous place to have an argument. Kitchen, of course, weapons everywhere, and not just for their safety, but the safety of their partner. We've had clients that unfortunately got attacked. They grabbed the knife, and now they're the perpetrators, and the perpetrator ends up being the victim, and they could easily lose a lot doing so. So we always tell them, try to merge yourself into the living room, because you have a higher percent chance of making it out that door than anywhere in the house. And if you do, any important documents like birth certificates, social security cards, marriage certificates, anything that's important, try to make copies of it, put it in a duffel bag with clothes, and give it to a close friend, family member to keep in case you ever have to flee your home and you don't have access to that, because I can't even count how many times we have clients coming into the shelter, and as soon as they go in there and they're asking for all these important documents, they send them pictures, they burn them. So it's very common that they destroy all that stuff. Another one that I started using is anything you have in your purse, driver's license, credit cards, also scan them and put them in with all your important documents in case you have to close them down. Just have everything with you and in a different place. If you could take originals, great, but most of the time they do check, because that's one of the things for them. It's a red flag. If the important documents are gone out of the house, they already know you're trying to leave. Another way is, most of the time, because the client knows when they start arguing when it's going to get really bad, which is most of the time the following day after they get out of work. So I always tell them, if you know that this argument is going to continue the following day, try to reach out to a family or friend that knows what's going on and tell them, hey, can you do me a favor around 7 p.m.? Can you give me a call? If I answer, and I tell you, hey, did you end up going to the park or did you end up going to the mall? I'm telling you to call 911. If I don't answer, call the police. Um, it's just a safe way of being able to have someone check on you, to make sure that you're safe, because a lot of the times they're listening to the conversation, they make them put you on, put the person on speaker, or they're just leaning towards them to hear if they're trying to, if they know what's going on. So long-term challenges for our clients, especially for our housing, is poor credit. A lot of the times is they made poor decisions or their partner destroyed their credit, and they don't qualify for a lot of places because they don't make enough money. And then rooms, they're super expensive, and plus a lot of them maybe allow one child. I haven't even seen someone that allows two. And our clients have about 3 to 4 kids, so there's no way we could put them in a room. And then for their mental health, every time we try to get them into certain places, there's a waiting list for to start therapy, even with us, unfortunately. And then transportation is a big one. We had a client that we helped him with the restraining order, and he had to give back her car. He took the car to the house and took off the license plates. So she was not able to move the car even though she got it back. We had to help her go back to court to ask the judge to tell him to give her back the license plates. And he said, yeah, I have them. I'll drop them off. It took about 8 months for him to give her back the license plates. So she had to, having a car, she had to be moving on the bus to even come in here. Once we got her into a place, I just started going to visit her at her place until we got her license plates back. So, I mean, it's just things like that we try to accommodate. Childcare is another one that's a big one. They try to apply for CDR, but again, there's a waiting list, and even if they're on CalWorks, it just takes a while. So one of the things that sometimes we are able to offer is covering childcare just so they could go to an interview or come to therapy, just have some time so they could do their own mental health care. Common resources, and I'm sure that you all have these resources, but here they are. Is what I usually give the client, especially for food. If they're waiting to get CalFresh, I always give them the line for food share. And then that's my information. That's my work cell phone. And then our office is open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., lunch 12 to 1. But we do have the 24-hour hotline, and the staff there is bilingual, and they'll answer 24 hours a day, even holidays. So if they ever are in need of services, no matter what department they need, they could call that number and they could refer them out to that department. Okay. And that is all.
Okay, thank you, Lorena. You know what? It just dawned on me. I think this break before we get into the actual document that we used to, or the form that we use to document the need for a transfer. Why don't we go ahead and open up to questions for you, and
Okay.
and then we'll jump into the document. So I think now would be a good time to have any questions on any part of Lorena's presentation, on anything she mentioned, or additional questions you may have. Go ahead and raise your hands, and we can answer those now. If there's anybody in the chat, anybody now and see. Okay, looks like we have Edith. Edith, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, everyone. Lorena, thank you so much for the information. I think it's important information that we can definitely share with the clients that we work with. So thank you for that. Can you talk a little bit more about the housing resources as far as what the process looks like when you have a client that may potentially qualify for that rental assistance?
So our rental assistant is for, again, for domestic violence survivors. So the process is they reach out to me. I do an intake with them just to see where they are. Um, and then if they're already living in the home and their partner left, then we move in with the process. I'll reach out if they want to the landlord. I never disclose that they're a victim of domestic violence. We just explain it that we're in assistance for families or individuals that are in need of rental assistance so they could get on their feet. Um, but yeah, the process it kind of looks different for everyone, but if they're already, I've had a few that were like in the process of eviction, I try to move in within a few days to cut a check and get them so they don't leave. And then we have clients that it takes a few months for them to find a place, that the landlord will take our check and that they like the area that they're gonna stay in. So it just depends on the client and the need that they're in.
So it's on a case-by-case basis as far as how many months you're able to pay for their assistance, right? Because if they're not working, it may take a little bit longer until they establish employment.
Yes, and also because we get a certain amount of money, so depending on how much
Mhm.
is left, then it depends on how many months I could cover.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Okay,
Lorraine, I just had a question about the process for someone who needs a restraining order. I know that the Family Justice Center is usually our first recommendation, but do you have another recommendation or should they go through the hotline first?
They could I don't know if I could give out my cell phone number, my work cell phone number. And they could reach me because I am the one that takes care of the restraining orders. And I could start the process. So again, FJC does send me clients just because some state that they can miss so many days of work or they don't have childcare to cover for 3 days because it's a lengthy process. The only difference between the FJC and myself, besides those 3 days, is they have advocates that go with the client to court for support. And unfortunately, because I'm the only one doing them, I can't provide um, that service. So I always let them know the pros and cons between me and the FGC, and then they kind of choose whichever fits better for them. So most of the time they're like, I have a friend that could go with me, and then they're okay going basically by themselves without an advocate, then it's perfect. I could help them. So if anybody wants it, my number is 805-616-0259. They could even have the client text me and let me know when's the safe time and date that I could call them, and I could call them back. So it's better that they reach me directly if it's possible.
okay. There's a question in the chat, Lorena, from Karina. I think it's to you or maybe someone from the group who could reply, but I think it's to you. How can we refer clients to you who need assistance in obtaining a restraining order or to do we still refer them to the Family Justice Center? So I think you just this is a question that Jen asked. Okay. Let's see. And then Dolores, if there's no availability at DV shelters or shelters, do you provide temporary motel vouchers?
Unfortunately, not right now.
Okay. And then Angel Camacho says that it's the um, good advice or need advice about removing the desk between you and the client. I have a few words on that too in our section coming up. So that's absolutely a wonderful way to work with the client in that moment of crisis. And then Brittany asks, is the rental assistance only for specific cities in Ventura County?
It's for all Ventura County.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions? If not, I mean, if you have more questions, I mean, at the end of the next few slides, we're happy to answer them as well. So if they come up, just let us know.
I have something really quick.
Yeah.
What is the vetting process beyond the initial assessment? Like, let's say there's one client that has children and one client that doesn't with equal, in equal scenarios. Are you going to give preference to the one that has the children? Like, is there any kind of superiority when you're vetting them for assistance, like let's say rental assistance or anything?
No, the way I do it is basically kind of first come, first serve. And so as they come, I do the intake, I do the process, and they're in. Now we move to the second phase, which is finding a place that will take them. So let's say that I do an intake and it's a single person, and then I do a second intake with someone that has children on the same day. I do the whole process, but whoever finds a place, the landlord accepts them, accepts our check. Then I move on with whoever's ready to move on in the program. So the preference, I don't have it. It's just basically based on the client on how fast they could find a place. And as soon as they text me or they call me and they're like, I found a place, can you please speak to the landlord? I call them right away. So I move as fast as they do. As soon as they talk to me, I call them and we move on. So I always let the client know that I could offer them like 6, 7 months, but if they take a while to find a place, I might not be able to offer them those 6 or 7 months because I have to move on to clients that are that they already have a place and they're moving in.
Gotcha, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your question, Lisa. We have a couple more questions. Lorena, Dolores asked if clients have used up rapid rehousing services for the current fiscal year with another agency, would they still be eligible for yours?
Yes, that I know of, yes.
Okay. And then Janelle asks, what about a woman who's fled from DV on her own, but the perpetrator attacked again when exchanging the kids? She has gotten an RO, but needs financial support for rent and court costs.
Yes. Yes, they don't have to be someone that just left the relationship. It could be someone that they have ongoing still DV even though they're not together, because that happens a lot. That's why I mentioned it's not a clean cut. They broke up and it's a happily ever after. It lingers on and it continues for a while, especially when kids or children are involved.
Okay. All right, very good. Good discussion, good healthy participation. Thank you everybody for your questions. Okay, so we'll go ahead and move to the next portion of the presentation, and we will talk about the actual form that we use for the transfers, the ETP, the Emergency Transfer Plan. So just a brief history. It's funny how this came about because we were invited the year before, no, about a year ago. We were invited to a special training with one of HCD's consultants on how to prepare and how to have an ETP in place. Again, it sounds redundant, but in case of emergencies, what to do, what forms do we need to fill out? How do we do this? And it coincides because around that same time or just before, Alicia, our team member, and I were invited to attend an event by the Family Justice Center in Westlake. And we heard several presentations. They were all moving presentations on survivors. And we left wide-eyed because there were characteristics, there were signs that we had no idea were occurring. And I remember on the drive back, we were talking about how, well, first of all, how awesome our community is and our community partners and all the agencies that we work with and everyone here on how we look out for our neighbors and so we need to develop something or a protection measure to have in place in case of an emergency. We were shocked, and I still remember some of those instances, and it's heartbreaking. And so about a few weeks later, the consultants from HCD reached out to us and asked us if we wanted to participate in a special cohort on VAWA and DTP training, and we're like, absolutely. So it was kind of nice how everything came together, and we were able to work on this and begin developing the document that we have here that we should begin to use on a regular basis, and hopefully not too frequent moving forward. So I broke it down into just 4 sections to keep it simple. So I'll have a brief history of why this is even a thing by HUD. Who is protected, who is covered, and this is probably the bulk of the form. So these protections and these safeguards are implemented, or they're built into the ETP, which is just a fillable form that we use to document the emergency. Just talk a little bit about housing protections, and then I will show what the actual form looks like, and then we will distribute that also via PDF for partners to have in your files. Okay, so just a quick history. I had a couple slides remembering my days back in history classes back in high school and college, and just HUD just loves to like lay it on with all sorts of acts and regulations and what have you. But it wasn't until 1990 when there was a spike in violence against, specifically against women. And in the subsequent years up to 1994, when this movement was formalized, and that's when the actual Violence Against Women Act came together, that was signed into law. That's when this movement was born, and to where protections and the program was, or this initiative was developed to have protections in place for not just women. I mean, it's as we found out, also gentlemen also suffer from DV, but specifically this is against women. But it wasn't until 1994 when this was formalized, and we had HUD had a structure in place for this. And then, as this just a screenshot there of the form, HUD really didn't do too much with this until 2022, when they said, you know, we really need to get on the ball. There are crises occurring everywhere. We really need to document this further and have protections in place for those who need it. And so it wasn't until 2022 when there was a reauthorization, and then that's when things started formalizing to the degree that now we were being asked to follow guidelines, regulations to be in compliance, which is when the trainers reached out to us to have a program in place moving forward, because it couldn't be left too loose because just there was a need for this. So in 2023, we were asked to early 2024, we were asked to participate in the cohort, and at the same time, HUD established a website on VAWA, and just even recently, as last night, I looked into it, and it's still up and running. So that's one of the things they haven't taken down yet. So there's good information, there's good links, and we will provide that link as well in the information that we provide after the presentation. Okay. Now, who is covered is the question. Okay, so Lorena talked to us about her experiences with the clients and who has gone to her asking for help and assistance. So the idea behind the ETP and the Violence Against Women Act is to protect anyone who's experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, dating violence, or stalking. Lorena mentioned, the person doesn't have to be married, related to, divorced, separated, being, in different states, what have you, it does not matter. And it doesn't matter also how long ago the survivor experienced the act of violence. There's still coverage, there's still protection in place for the person, for the survivor or the person fleeing. Immigration status also does not impact, the rights are still there. Again, immigration status does not matter. That should not be a reason for not offering protection to anyone that's seeking it. If they're fleeing or they are, or if they have suffered DV in the past. The housing protections, these apply to, at least through HUD, they apply to anyone who's in a HUD shelter, transitional housing, permanent housing, again, subsidized by HUD. Or any other federal affordable housing program. And the good thing about this, these protections are in place, and this coverage that is offered is that regardless of beliefs, of how you identify, legal status, location, the protections are in place for those that need it. So that shouldn't be a concern. That shouldn't be a reason to, well, it's easier said than done, but that should help ease the fears about someone reaching out if there's fear, if they're afraid, if they're afraid of persecution, or if immigration is around the corner, or if the abuser and his buddies are lurking. God knows. Doesn't matter, the protections are in place for anyone that needs it. And then that's one of the thoughts that our trainer had emphasized, that the protections have to be there at all costs. Okay. And then as we move on to the next slide, so under VAWA, anyone who's experienced DV, dating violence, or sexual assault, they cannot be denied admission or assistance to any HUD unit, regardless of the type of violence that was committed against them. They cannot be evicted or have their assistance terminated if there is a landlord that discriminates, if they think that there's someone might be a threat, if they just don't want to help, that's not an excuse. There has to be assistance provided and protections in place at all times. The only important thing here is and this is also one of the focal points of the form of the ETP, is that the client has to be able to self-certify that they are fleeing or that they are a survivor. There shouldn't be any other proof needed to demonstrate what they've gone through. So just the self-certification should be enough, or not should be, has to be enough in order to document that they are, again, fleeing or are survivors. There's no additional proof, even if it was that, yeah, it's just there's no need for that. And there's just abusive folks that might require additional documentation, but I mean, it's, yeah, not necessary. If there is a shared unit between the person that's fleeing along with the abuser, there can be a request to split the lease and not have the person fleeing be held responsible or have anything against them or discriminated against, and that way the separation from the abuser can be completed without any retaliation against the person fleeing. But there is a right to be able to split the lease without any cost repercussions or penalties to the person that's fleeing. Also, there cannot be any intimidations against the person fleeing or the survivor. So, one of those from the abuser or the landlord that's just not on the shady side saying, better keep quiet or else, can't have that. So there's it can't be intimidated in any form or manner against that. And if worse comes to worse, then the law enforcement can assist and when needed. There's the sheriff, police department, any of the law enforcement agencies are able to provide assistance. You just need to give them a call and let them know what's happening. And also, if the client has Section 8 voucher, they could take that with them to continue, and wherever they transfer to, depending on availability, and continue using their voucher as they try to separate from their abuser. Okay. So again, must be able to provide proof, must be able to self-certify. And we do have the form that's attached to the instructions, and the signature is enough to self-certify. When the person that's fleeing or the survivor has the need, so we complete the form. They have the right to strict confidentiality. And I'll talk a little bit about the procedure for this in case they need to be presented through pathways to home. But strict confidentiality must be maintained always. Before I show everyone what the form looks like and how it's to be completed, and then the considerations that we're taking into account. One of the things that we had discussed as a team, we discussed among the COC team and also with Lorena, our special training session as well with that special cohort we went through, is that HUD has a lot of compliance issues and CFRs to follow and regulations and all that HUD speak that is sometimes overbearing. It is overbearing and it is daunting for the client at times if they're going through an emergency. And so our idea as a community here, as a COC, as the team, as everyone as a community partner, is that the ETP should be focused on, yes, compliance, which is why we need to do this and why we have the training, but the focus should be more human-centered. That's the main reason for this. Again, regulation, that's understandable, is everyone needs to comply, HUD is HUD. But at the end of the day, the person that is experiencing the violence, the abuse, these protections, this protocol, this procedure, what have you, is for them. Has to be client-centered at all times. To that point, Lorena mentioned about how she moves away from the desk and sits next to the client, and they have a conversation. That's the client-centered focus that everyone should be implementing when a situation like this arises. One of the questions, and this was, well, could be developed later on, but I remember our trainer had said that he would have liked to see in the form, but this could be asked off to the side. Imagine this, or just put yourself in the shoes of the person that's experiencing the abuse. Rather than come at them with complex forms and procedures, they're facing an uncertainty that I don't think could even be you can't begin to describe it. And to come at them with something so daunting, so complex, might add to that trauma. So something along the lines of when we're working with this document, we could say, hey, are you okay? Can I get you anything? Can I get you a meal? Are you hungry? Do you need a doctor? Do you need medicine? Do you need some quiet? Just anything to comfort the person at that moment. That's the key to making this document work, to making this procedure work. So with that focus, we designed this plan, or this form. Might not be perfect. It might have moving parts here and there. And to the participants' point from earlier in the session, and also as Lorena mentioned, each case is different. And each day is different, to where if there aren't units available for transfer, if there isn't any funding from this grant, it's this document provides us a guide per se. It's not all inclusive, and it's not, okay, this is it, the rigid for. It gives us the guide. This is on paper. We document the process, and we assist the client as best we can, with all our partners assisting and providing that support. So again, this is more like I look at it that way. This is more like a guide to help us in those time of crises. So on that note, so if someone is fleeing, or if there's a survivor, well, first and foremost, if someone's fleeing, then we recommend to right away contact any of our partners, well, these 3 partners, for immediate relocation assistance. So please call Coalition for Family Harmony if you have someone that is asking for help. Also, another great partner is Interface Child and Family Services, or the Family Justice Center. I know that these 3 partners probably talk to each other when looking for units, resources, available space, units, etc. But still, they are in that immediate emergency, they are our first line of defense. So please reach out to them and ask for assistance. To complete the form, and again, so the forms will be available through the RCOC website, but we will also be, again, attaching these to our presentation later on. So you'll have the form. So you complete the form, and then for any of the COC units, we need to channel those through CES, as through Coordinated Entry Pathways to Home, and ask for a meeting, because this is an at-risk case, and we're looking for a transfer. Just when you do submit your information, the only thing that we require is that you block out any PII, and if an HMIS number is assigned, even better. And I know that there's technical limitation. Well, there are limitations with the use of identifying information for someone that's fleeing or is a survivor with HMIS, but we need an identifier to make sure that the person isn't known through HMIS. So we need confidentiality, has to be at always at safeguarded. The other thing that we were asked to mention, and whether through the training or through any of the partners, so even though the form is filled and it's completed and signed off on, and so they're ready to move on to the next phase to look for a unit, that doesn't guarantee by any means that that a transfer will occur. Sadly, as everyone here is well aware, our housing stock is just about zero. And so the mere fact that we complete this form does not guarantee at all any type of guarantee that a transfer will occur at any moment. That would be the ideal, but more than likely, we would have to do a search and see day by day again what's available and see if we are able to transfer or to offer the transfer to the client. And the other thing that we also do want to mention, and this is something that we learned, or that I learned and found out that if there is a unit available, if there's, and the client is offered that opportunity to transfer, the person that might not move at all. It just might happen that they have a change of heart. As we learned, they might not want to leave their abuser after all. For whatever reason, not that it could be a point of frustration, but you put in all this work, all this effort, all this concern and worry for the client, and then at the end of the day, it's like, oh, I don't want to move. That might happen, and we all have to be cognizant of that. But it's still, we work for the person that's fleeing. Can't stress that enough. And if they come to the point where they just will not or cannot accept a transfer, then hopefully we can hold on to that unit and offer it to someone who can or will be able to transfer. So just a couple of things to keep in mind. Okay, so this is what the form actually looks like. This is the conclusion of the form, well, the presentation, but this is what the form looks like. Section 1 is a description. So and again, this is just a guide to where we're documenting the process for the client. So the description, housing providers, the agency name is listed there. And again, just a couple of stipulations on what is the definition of domestic violence, who's fleeing, who is who in the plan, who's identified as who. Confidentiality protections are stressed again, and then there's guidance on safety and security for clients. And then part 2 goes on to describe who's eligible for transfers. Section 3 talks about the documentation. And then to this point, this is where I lost my train of thought, but this is to where we were talking about that there is no need for additional proof that someone is going through the abuse. The self-certification is more than enough to document the need. Let's see, and then my next slide. It's 5 pages, I believe, 5 or 6 pages. The instructions on how to complete, but at the beginning, this was a lot longer. This was probably twice as much, if not a little bit more, because when working in detailing and covering, we wanted to make sure that everything was in compliance per HUD, because they were going to start to enforce that as of late last year. But as we worked along and we were able to get to a shorter working draft that's also easier for the providers and community partners to fill out, and also, again, not to be daunting for clients, because the last thing you want to do, and I think Lorena, no, I don't think, I know Lorena can correct me if I'm wrong, you don't want to be sitting there with the client if they're experiencing a horrible situation, and then you have a 20-page document that you need to fill out, and you're pressing for answers, or you're asking, hey, I need this, that's not the point. So again, so then this is the guide. Section 4, again, confidentiality. We are seeking to protect the client's identity at all times for their protection. And then the section 5 talks about the transfer itself and the timing, the availability of units to, again, this doesn't guarantee anything. As much as we would love to have plenty of units available. Oh, no, I take that back. We shouldn't, because first of all, I wouldn't like to see anybody go through this. This is horrible. So, but if we have to, then we should have some units, but sometimes it's just, that's not feasible, or that can't happen. So, but again, it all depends on a day to day and how things evolve with the client. And then last, we have a page on resources. We also list per HUD resources on a national level and local resources. So again, we list Coalition, Interface, the Family Justice Center, wonderful partners, great resources. They're the subject matter experts. Your team here at COC, our job is to help coordinate or navigate as best possible and to make sure that everyone's following HUD rules. But your best sources for questions and for particulars and details on working through difficult situations are these wonderful partners. Casa Pacifica also, I believe, does some work with, especially with Tay, if they're fleeing some sort of violence. So there's domestic sources, local resources, and then just a quick section on denials for service. Really can't deny anybody, especially if it's in a HUD subsidized unit. Yeah. All right. Just a couple quick tips on best practices that we picked up here and there from also in talking with our partners through the trainings and other additional research that we conducted. Make sure that, and this is for, even more so for housing providers, make sure that your leases incorporate VAWA protections. So any short blurb to saying that you are in compliance with, as the county, we would be in compliance. But any blurb to say that yes, you do offer coverage, and that you are aware that you would make the client aware that they have rights and protections under VAWA. So make sure that you have some language to that in your lease agreements. And then make sure that your staff that does navigation understands the protections, that most, if not all, are to offer the assistance and the support, no questions asked. Again, as the clients go through their challenge, they don't need additional grief or any additional daunting steps to have to go through to receive assistance. So I think that's probably a moot point, because again, our county is amazing with all the partners we have. Everyone is understanding of our community needs, so I'm probably pretty sure that's a moot point. But still, something to keep in mind. Also, consider flexibilities when placing clients or trying to place clients. If there's, again, no available units, there's a lack of units, we might have to go outside the COC. And if that is what's required to be able to provide that assistance or that safety, that security for the client, then that's an option that has to be considered. Which is also, again, the client decides that. So it's not, can't force them either. Well, you know what? There's only this, so tough. That's not the point. Just everyone consider an open mind, and if they have to transfer out of the county, out of the COC, there's a unit that came up that's has to be considered as an option. Child welfare services also offer support. So if there's like to Lorena's point earlier in our presentation, the mom had her children, Child Welfare Services might be able to provide additional support in something like that. Okay, and then also HUD VAWA, there's a website. I will include that also in the package that we'll be sending out with information to all our attendees. Again, I'm surprised that it's up, given the uncertainty and all the chopping that's been going around. You know. Anyways, so there's information. There are good links. We'll include that link for everybody to follow that, to check that out. And also as one of my personal favorites, and I like to use lists or cheat sheets whenever I work through any situation, just so I try not to forget anything, or like I forgot with the slide where my mind went blank. So write everything down, jot notes, and then make sure that you have the possible responses to questions from clients, and just be prepared to assist and to provide that support. Be human, be kind, and as all cases are different, you might not have the answer, and that's fine, but then we could say that, or tell that to the person that's looking for the support. We'll find that out, and we'll get you whatever it is that you need so that you're safe and comfortable. And again, document everything and always err on the side of caution. Don't assume. No, I think he'll be okay. They won't reach her. They won't find. We don't know. So always be mindful of that, and be prepared for who knows what might happen again. And this is all in service of our community members that are experiencing domestic violence. So yeah, this is for them. And again, we have awesome partners, which I'm glad we have. And so yeah. So this is our presentation. This is the end of at least of this part of the presentation. I don't know if folks have any more questions. Stop my screen share and come back. Let's see. I'll look at the chat. Let's see. Karina. Let's see. We got. Okay. Karina says, what are the protections to an individual who are in market rate rental with no subsidy?
Felipe
Lorena,
responded to that
Okay.
one with
Okay.
referral to the Housing Rights Center.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, are there any other questions thank you for assisting Jen with the questions. Is there anyone else that hasn't had a question answered yet, or?
There's one from Aisha. For
Okay.
clarification, is a restraining order required under VAWA protections if the housing authority is requesting one and the client does not want one in order to be considered for a transfer to another unit? So if I'm reading this right, Aisha, the housing authority doesn't have the right to require a client to file a restraining order. It's up to the client. And I could ask Lorena to chime in here. But if they're asking for a transfer for safety reasons, that should be allowed to be requested. Housing authorities obviously have different rules under like housing choice vouchers or Section 8 vouchers. So that request would have to go through the housing authority. For our vouchers through the continuum of care, permanent supportive housing, the case would need to get presented through Pathways to Home to make that request. And most of the time when a transfer is requested, it's because the household composition has changed or there's a threat or safety concern. Lorena, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, I know that in the past, years back, when we used to try to get clients into the RAIN project, they would also require a restraining order. But based on clients, just like anything, it sometimes helps and it sometimes makes the situation worse. So I always go based on what the client says. If they say, if I get a restraining order, he's gonna kill me. He's not gonna care about a paper. I'm gonna go and trust that what they're telling me is correct. So a lot of the times I know that it's for safety concerns. A lot of agencies or housing agencies require a restraining order. They want one because they feel it's safer, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes you really are putting the client in danger by forcing a restraining order. At the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper. It's not gonna stop bullets and it's not gonna stop them from attacking them. If they don't have anything to lose, if they've been to jail before, I very much doubt a restraining order is gonna keep them away. It does happen that they do stay away, and they respect it, but if the client's saying, I know he's not going to do it, more than likely they're not. So I just wish people would understand that it's not always gonna help. You might put that client more in danger by asking for one.
That's a good question, Aisha, and I'll follow up on the housing authority side to get some clarification.
Looks like Carrie has a question.
Hey guys, sorry, I wasn't challenged with Zoom. I would be able to ask it in chat, but I'm just wondering because all the forms that I have, it says that is this client fleeing domestic violence? So I have actually always told my staff they have to be fleeing, but now it sounds like they don't have to be fleeing. They just have to be a survivor of domestic violence. And I just want to confirm that's right before I change my language to my staff.
Yes, yes, it's a little different now, but it's even if it was in the past, yes, doesn't matter if you're in the if it's current. The only difference is that if there's the that immediate, that emergency right then and there, then that's when we would have to go to and ask for assistance to Coalition Interface or Family Justice Center for that. Otherwise, it's considered DV, even if it's in the past, and then we can go through pathways to home.
I guess the one thing to clarify there is for an emergency transfer, they do have to be actively fleeing. Like that's a situation where they're fleeing a situation of either violence or stalking, and it could be from maybe someone in the past that they still have concerns about. I think that's what you're asking, Carrie.
Yes and no. I'm thinking about ESG funding, CBDG, HAP, all those different funding pools that we have. We need to certify someone as literally homeless or fleeing, homeless prevention, or fleeing domestic violence. And so to meet that criteria, it says fleeing domestic violence. And I don't know if I need to remove that from my certification now, or if that's still appropriate if they were at risk. Although your other answer was very helpful too.
Okay,
I'd say, yeah, it stays in there, the fleeing DV. Lorena, I don't know if you have any responses on how we would determine what that means, actively fleeing.
That's a hard one. It could be that they're leaving the home, but there could also be, we get a lot of stalking. So they move to a different place and they find them. They haven't been in the relationship for a few years, but they continue to stalk them. A lot of them have restraining orders, but they get very smart. How to avoid getting the violation on the order, meaning that they text from other phones. Um, and they're very vague on the text, but they know that it's them. So it's like little stuff like that I feel that they're still fleeing the relationship even though it ended a year or so ago. So I feel like that's when it gets tricky.
Okay, and what we could do, Carrie, we can connect later on because I know that it was, as we work together, and we know that ESG is, yeah. So let's connect and see. We'll do some more, see if we could find a definition and assist you with that. But yeah, let's we can connect offline. Okay. So we're just coming up on time. We've got about a minute left. Anybody else have any questions? Yes, no? And again, just as I've been repeating myself all afternoon, you will be emailed. Everyone who signed up for the training will be emailed the package with information. You'll have Lorena's slides, our slides, the ETP, the instruction form, the fillable form, and also a copy of the lease addendum that could be attached to any lease agreement when finding a unit. Okay. All right. Okay, so if no one else has any questions, then we will end at that. And again, thank you everybody for attending. We appreciate all of you, your attendance, your participation, and look forward to another training with you guys soon. So thank you.